there is no playbook to any of this stuff. You have to develop your own over time. And when you break it down to small, attainable tasks, it's just like, because there's always something to do, right? Like there's always another task that you can work on and this and that. Where I found that building up my own system and really forcing myself to keep it simple is the most effective way because it's the long play.
Welcome into another episode of Everything is Logistics, a podcast for the thinkers in freight. We are proudly presented by SPI Logistics, and I'm your host, Blythe Brumleve. We've got a great episode for y'all today. It is going to be releasing, you are listening to this hopefully on July 4th, so we've got the perfect guest for y'all, and that's Chris Jolly, aka the Freight Coach. We're going to be talking about what the new American dream looks like. So, Chris, welcome back to the show.
Blythe, thank you so much for having me on. I'm already fired up and ready just to get this rolling because I always enjoy our conversations. And, I remember when we both started, well, you had been doing social media stuff and podcasting for a long time, but like when we kind of first met back, it was back in 2020. And, it's like we've gotten to know each other over the years. And it's like every time we're around, like I love hanging out with you, but I'm like, I wish we could hang out more because we're aligned on so much and I'm ready to rock.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were talking for a good, 10 minutes, and we probably could have kept it going before we hit record, but we started getting fired up about a few different things. Jaguars mostly about that. I'm trying to enjoy my summer before I have to start worrying about this team.
Yeah.
So I'm still in like the summer mode, summer mindset. That's where I get a lot of my motivation is the downtime of where I can let my brain sort of rest and relax and think before I get into the thralls of the busy fall season. But I want to learn about where you find sort of motivation, and that's where I want to kick this off is where, because you are a very motivating person, and I think anybody who has ever listened to your shows knows that right off the jump. So I just want to jump into, where do you find motivation? What motivates you?
Oh, it's something that, for me, I think now it's knowing how long I live below my potential. And I've realized that over these last couple of years, more than anything, is it's like, I tried so long to just kind of like go with the flow and be liked by everybody and, just be a systems person, right? Like work in the system, work for a corporation, knowing that I didn't actually want to do that. And then when I got out on my own, I'm like, holy shit, there's so much opportunities that are out there. And I'm like, if I want to accomplish what I know I can accomplish, I have to completely reinvent myself. And I have to be committed to the fact that this is a lifelong thing. Like there isn't an end zone for me. There isn't a goal line for me. This is like, I want to look back and be like, how much did I improve over my lifetime? And that's like my ultimate motivator. And I also want to set an example for my son, most importantly, about like what you can actually do if you really are willing to work for it day in and day out and deal with all the bullshit that comes your way. Because, just like with everybody, like I have my bad days just like fucking everybody, but I've built the discipline that I'm going to show up and I'm gonna put in the work. Yeah, some days might not be as effective as others, but I'm gonna show up and push through it no matter what.
Now, with that mindset, it's very entrepreneurial. So I'm curious as to why it sort of took you a while, or did you always have maybe side hustles in addition to a full-time career? Because you worked in freight brokerage,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly, for a long time. Thought you were going to become an executive, maybe at a freight company. But then I think the market maybe shifted for you, and give me a glimpse of what that timeline looked like, because you sound like you've maybe always been this motivated, this passionate, which is like the core, I think, feature of every good entrepreneur. So I'm curious where like the light bulb moment was for you to say, I'm going to actually start my own business. I'm done working in this sort of, corporate
Yeah.
grind.
No, it was back in 2020. It was, I had just moved to Arizona with my wife and my son, and, you know, I was looking, I just felt like I had accomplished everything I could in brokerage. I wanted to go try something new. At least that's what I thought. And I went out there. I had a bunch of interviews lined up and I resigned from my job. And then COVID became COVID and all the interviews went away. I was out of a job, beginning of a pandemic. And I'm like, fuck, what am I going to do here? And, it was like I unapologetically talk about my faith. I'm a man of God. I had been praying for a long time. Like, I want to be my own boss. I want to do my own thing. There was something that was speaking to me to go out and do it, right? Because I don't like I will say I'm a great employee because I show up, I do my job and everything else. I might not be the easiest person to work with, but I show up every single day and I do my job to my best abilities. And I wanted to do it for myself. I had saw a buddy of mine go out and start his own freight brokerage. And I think like that was kind of the real driving thing behind it was a little, I'll call it what it was, probably jealousy at the time where I'm like, well, damn, if he can fucking do it, I can do it. Why am I not doing it? And, again, back to my faith, God works in mysterious ways. And I think that was that time where he's like, all right, if you're serious about it, here's your opportunity. Nobody's hiring. No one's going to hire you for the next 90 days. If you want to start a business, this is your time. And I truly feel that. And you don't have to be, a person of faith or religious to feel this way. I truly feel like you are given a couple of windows in your life to do what you were truly meant to do. And most people look past them. Most people don't see them for what it is because it is hard. It's really hard to go out and essentially throw away the money that you could be making and get kicked in the fucking teeth repeatedly every single day. But it's one of those things where it's like I have to find that motivation to figure it out because if I don't, I truly feel like I'm gonna have to answer to God one day when I go to heaven, and He's gonna be like, "Really? You you had it all there. You were that close,
Mm.
and you just went back to your old ways." So that scares me more than anything. And this is I've never told anybody this, Blythe. So this is full brutal transparency. That's kind of one of those things that like it really centered me and it made me think like, hey, if I'm gonna do this, if I'm gonna pursue it, this is my time, this is my moment, and I have to go for it.
It's almost like you need faith in that time frame of when you make the decision of when you're going to go out on your own because you have no idea where your next check is going to come from. And
Mhm.
that just lights a different kind of fire underneath you where it's going to happen. It's going to work out. And I think that there's a level of faith, but also a stubbornness to keep working at it until you figure it out. Is that the same? Do you find that that was the same for you?
That is literally me in a nutshell. Like I could plan everything out. And again, like this isn't me saying, you go be reckless and like there's a lot of value in planning and building the structure. But I'm the type of person where for the overwhelming majority of my life, I always thought like there was a new way of doing it, or there's a better way to lose weight or do this. And I overlooked how simple it actually truly is, right? Like it's not easy, but it's simple in its concept, right? Like with work. I'm in a group called the Arte Syndicate. Andy Frisella and Ed Milet run this. Like from a content perspective, from like a free business perspective, those are the two individuals that you need to follow because they've both built actual real businesses. And they talk about like having simple, effective tasks every single day inside of your business. And that's really what my days are deduced down to now is I have core things that I have to accomplish every single day because I am managing a couple of things right now. So it's like, I have to find all my own guests. So that's a critical task every single day. Find guests for your podcast, right? 2 guests a day is my thing where I'll reach out to people via DM, email, text, whatever. I'll do that every single day. I got to meet with my sales rep that I hired. That's on my critical task list. I got to meet with my marketing guy every single day. That's my critical tasks list. So it's like making sure that I'm doing that because, you know, I, there is no playbook to any of this stuff. You have to develop your own over time. And when you break it down to small, attainable tasks, it's just like, because there's always something to do, right? Like there's always another task that you can work on and this and that, where I found that building up my own system and really forcing myself to keep it simple is the most effective way because it's the long play, right? Like it's same like with, because I've really taken a lot of reinventing my health here recently. And I'll talk about it more in a later date and time about why I did it. But for me, it's like it's finding what works for me and sticking to that. Stop paying attention to the noise, stop paying attention to this. It's what works for me, and then doubling down on that and then making adjustments as I go. And, again, because there's not an easier route. The easiest route is the route that you're avoiding most times than not.
Well said. And I think it's finding those little moments that you can check off and of the day that makes you it's like a psychological thing when you can mark something off of your to-do list and know that the most important task or tasks that you had to get done that day are done. And then that frees up your mind to be able to focus on other little things that are still important, but they're not as important as those critical tasks. I'm curious to know when you did back to when you first started out, what were the
Mhm.
most important things for you to tackle? How did you know what to tackle when you choose to be your own boss? I know you obviously you started the podcast,
Yeah.
but what were some of those other things that were those critical tasks at that moment that leads you to being able to hire other people?
I mean, to be honest, I Googled, like I Googled a lot. I spent a lot of time. I call it YouTube University,
Yes.
and I just researched everything. And, because again, I was just like, oh, I started a Gmail and then I'm like, oh, I need a business license. All right, how do I get a business license? So then I went to find that out through the state of Arizona and then getting my EIN and then a couple months later getting a business bank account and then finding a CPA and then this is all not even including how do I create revenue. This is all like building the structure of it all. And for me it was like I just listened to a lot of Gary Vee back in the day as well. And I still think he is probably the best resource for content creation out there if you're looking to do it because he literally will tell you everything that you need to do in it. And it was just like, hey, create content and just post every single day. Just post every single day. And then eventually you'll develop your flow. And that's what I did. And I'm just a firm believer of I want to do what other people aren't willing to do. Not a lot of people are going to post a video or do a video podcast or anything like that. They all want to hide behind a fake fucking profile pic and everything else and put on a facade that there's something that they're actually not. Where I want to develop my own style and keep this going and just stay to my course, stay to my playbook, and not really pay attention to any of the other noise out there because I know um, the overwhelming majority of people are not anything that they fucking try and portray that they are online.
Are you in freight sales with a book of business looking for a new home? Or perhaps you're a freight agent in need of a better partnership? These are the kinds of conversations we're exploring in our podcast interview series called The Freight Agent Trenches, sponsored by SPI Logistics. Now, I can tell you all day that SPI is one of the most successful logistics firms in North America who helps their agents with back office operations such as admin, finance, IT, and sales, but I would much rather you hear it directly from SPI's freight agents themselves. And what better way to do that than by listening to the experienced freight agents tell their stories behind the how and the why they joined SPI. Hit the freight agent link in our show notes to listen to these conversations, or if you're ready to make the jump, visit spi3pl.com.
And so when you are so you're going through this process and you're highly motivated at the time. I mean, you're just highly motivated in general, but then you know you're going to start that podcast. And then so what was that first sort of light bulb moment for you that said, okay, I'm on the right track? Like it's enough to, it's one thing to make the jump and to start doing it, but how do you know that what was that first moment that you said, okay, I'm definitely doing the right thing?
I was probably a year in.
Mm.
It was probably a year in that I went to my first TIA conference, and I had a bunch of people come up. They're like, "Dude, I see your shit. I love what you're doing." And I'm like, "Wait, people are listening," you know, like because you start podcasting and it's like you might get 100 downloads in a month for the first couple of months. And then I remember I was like 4 months in before I got my first like 300 downloads in a month. And I'm like, dang, that's fucking sick. And I didn't know that what I was doing and that I was getting noticed because like, it's not like you get a ton of engagement on your post, right? Like, it's not like everybody likes it and comments on it and everything else, but people are watching. And, so it's like, and that's my whole thing of like developing your own style is if there's one piece of advice I could give, don't fucking pay attention to any metrics early on. If your intentions are truly you want to post your perspective and put your story out there and do that, which I highly recommend everybody does, don't pay attention to the metrics because they're all vanity. And I know everybody in this industry, because we're in freight, so I'm going to talk about freight. I know everybody out there who just posts for vanity, and that's why they've never been on my show, and that's why they're not going to be on my show. It's not that they're bad people. I don't want anybody who's just trying to be an influencer for the sake of being influencers. And when you're tagging other people in posts and you're calling out companies, it's like, be a fucking adult. If I have a problem with the company, I'm going to address it with them behind closed doors. I'm not going to fucking make a social media post whining about it, right? And so that's how I knew the reach of social media was the amount of people that came up to me, and I'm like, holy fuck. This is real. Like, this is real. This isn't just me in my bedroom. Like, this is actually making a difference out there.
Yeah, I very well said. I just spoke with Kara Brown from Lead Coverage, and she said that one of the, I believe I'm paraphrasing correctly when she says that there was one gentleman that was very high up executive at a company. I think I'm not exactly sure which company, so I don't want to say the wrong name, but he came up to her at a conference and had said how much that he loved all of her content that she was putting out. And she's like, what the hell? Like, you've never engaged with it. You've never liked it. You've never commented on it. And he was like, no, I see it all. He's like, I don't, engage with anything. I just see it. And I think that that's an overwhelming amount of people who are active on social media. They just don't actively engage, and you don't really know until, like you said, you're at a conference and then you're getting the in-person impact of all of the sort of the blood, sweat, and tears that you've been putting in and sleepless nights over the past year.
Yeah. And that's exactly it, right? Like, and I'm not saying this to brag, I've never made an outbound advertiser sales pitch. All of my advertisers have been inbound. And it's because of pushing through that like first year when nobody was engaging on my shit, right? Like, I don't even think I've ever had like a viral post or anything like that. I think like I had one that kind of took off, but it wasn't like a viral in viral standards or anything like that. I just consistently show up every day and I'm going to say my piece. And it was, because I think like it was around that time that I think I got like a post that had like, I don't know, a couple 20, I think it was like 20,000 forms of engagement on the post. Or maybe even 20,000 likes. I don't remember what it was, but I remember the next day I was like, I had that moment where I'm like, oh, fucking, this is it. Everything's going to blow up. And I put something out the next day and like it fell flat. And I'm like, fuck, okay, never mind. I'm not as cool as I think I am after that one post. And I'm like, and then after due time, it was probably a couple of years in, I was just like, you know what? I don't want to, like, I just want to help people, right? Like, I just want to put content out there that people can apply to their business and see a difference. Like I say before every single podcast that I do. And I truly feel that way. I just want to help people. So it's like, I don't care if 10,000 people don't comment on a post or like a post that I do. I care about the DMs that I get, and I won't mention their names. I care about the weekly, sometimes daily DMs that I get from the people who are like, hey, I've been struggling in sales. I applied what you said and I landed a customer. And those are the messages that mean something to me, because that is the impact that I'm chasing. I'm not trying to chase after me becoming famous by any stretch of the imagination, because that's not what my mission is. My mission is to fundamentally change the transportation industry. My mission is to help others with what I truly feel like is one of my blessings and my gifts in life from God is my voice. I truly feel that. And when I've shifted that perspective, Blythe, everything fucking shot up. Everything shot up, because it's like, you get it. You're a creator. I can't control the algorithms, right? I can't control if iTunes, because iTunes massively shook everything up with their downloads and how they track downloads here. Everybody's downloads were cut by 80% because of this change. Same thing with Spotify. I can't control what Spotify does, YouTube, any of the social media platforms. But if my intentions are pure, I'm going to win long term. And that's what it is, because it's not about how many people, it's about helping that one person every day. And it's like, if I look back now, like I've done 950 plus episodes. If I've helped 950 people, that's a fucking lot of people. If you put 1,000 people in a room, that's a lot of people.
That's so I'm a co-founder of the group called is a group called Jack's Podcasters Unite in here in Northeast Florida, and we would tell people, and we would have speakers come to some of our events, and one of the speakers that said something one time that really resonated with me, and it coincides with what you're saying, is that if you have maybe, like, I don't know, 30 views on a video or 30 downloads on a podcast, like imagine you're standing in a room and those 30 people are there to listen to you and to hear you. Wouldn't you feel incredibly proud of that moment? But
Yeah.
yet we're so, I think, just disillusioned when we see the number 30 on, a YouTube video or something, and we think, oh my God, we're failing.
Yeah. I think so. Another really good follow out there is Alex Hermosi. And he talks about one of his, I think a company that he invests in, like the founder of it, has like a multi 7-figure social media following, and they only have like less than 5,000 followers because it's 100% targeted to their target market and everything like that. So it's like not everybody is going to be top 1% in forms of followers and everything else. But here's a harsh truth out there that a lot of people might not know or don't want to admit. You can buy followers, you can buy comments, you can buy downloads on your podcast. I don't pay for any of those things, but I get approached by this shit all the fucking time. So a lot of what you see out there is fake. Okay. It truly is. The amount of downloads can be inflated. The amount of followers can be inflated. The amount of engagements can be inflated, but your impact can't be inflated, because there's a lot of people out there who just post mindless, empty bullshit, and it's not making a difference. And again, I'm a capitalist at heart. I'm not here to knock anybody's hustle, but you're going to eventually have to wake up one day and realize I'm a phony motherfucker.
So give us a glimpse into so we've talked a lot, with your career starting out. Let's talk a little bit about what it looks like present day. So you have the podcast, you're a freight agent for SPI, which we're going to definitely talk about here in a minute. But what are I think you are also involved in a couple of other companies. Give us a layup of what, or what's in
Yeah.
your landscape of what you got going on, because it's a lot, I think.
It is a lot. And I would never, ever, ever recommend anybody do this because like I just said yes to too much. And fortunately, I've been able to condense it down to a couple of core things. And fortunately, it's all in the exact same vertical. But again, I wouldn't recommend any of this, right? Because I started out doing sales consulting. I started the podcast to market my services going on out there. And then eventually I stopped doing sales consulting and I just started the brokerage, and I went through SPI. Fortunately, SPI took a chance on me because like I didn't have an existing book of business. I didn't have anything to bring to the table outside of this pretty face. It was really all I had to bring to the table, and a work ethic, right? And they took a chance on me, and we were able to run with that. And they've been a phenomenal partner from that perspective. So it's like I have the podcast, which is it's a machine now, right? Like I have a system. It might look like it is a lot of work, don't get me wrong, but it's very tested at this point where I have it down to a science on like how much effort it actually takes to put an episode out there. And now, fortunately, I have a full-time, almost a full-time marketing staff that, and it's not staff, it's one guy, but the dude's a G, right? Like he has it down and he's built it up. So we look so much bigger than we really are. But there's just two of us who are doing that. And I got involved in a SaaS company, broker carrier, but it's more of like my IP that the co-founder needs. So it's not like I'm doing a ton of in-person meetings and stuff like that. It's a lot of, he's not I don't want to say that he's not a people person, but like he loves to communicate via email and text. So it's like, boom, we just fire off messages back and forth to each other. But the brokerage is the third one that I do, and that takes up 85% of my time.
Oh, wow.
And, there's a lot of that's built in it because it's, that's where all the competition is inside of the brokerage space, right? And there's a lot of shitty brokers that are out there. So there's a lot more garbage that you have to fight through. It's not easier. Like the media stuff isn't easier because like I truly feel like we're trailblazing and kind of writing the script. So there's going to be people who come behind us in like 5 years who are just going to have, boom, they're going to be able to copy and build successful companies based off of the work that we're kind of forging through right now, which I love, right? But I think like throughout my day, it's really been about kind of systemizing it where, from 6:30 till probably 1 o'clock in the afternoon is all brokerage stuff. I sprinkle my live show in there, but it's a system. I'm in 30 minutes, I'm out, I send the video file over, post-production takes over at that point, and then I go back to running freight. And I've kind of turned it into I don't want to call it a game, but on my live show, like I'll stop in the middle of my show and I'll respond to customers and I'll quote loads and do everything because again, I always tell people there's a real side of freight, right? Like, and I want to show people like, hey, like this is what you got to do out there. So I don't want to call it like I made a game out of it, but I built it into my day.
Brokering success demands a battle-ready strategy. Tide TMS equips freight brokers with the ultimate battle station for conquering a tough market. With Tide, brokers gain access to a comprehensive platform where rate intelligence and quote history converge on a single screen. It's not just a page, it's a strategic command center designed to help brokers win. Tide equips your team with all of the data they need to negotiate with confidence and allows them to communicate directly with carriers and customers from a simple control base. Revolutionize the way your brokers perform by giving them a competitive advantage with Tide TMS. For more info, go to tai-software.com/battle stations, and we also have a link for you in the show notes to sign up for a demo.
And I think that is where people probably resonate the most with you is that you're not just talking about, there's a lot of like, sort of TikTok influencers
Yeah.
or, they popped up during the pandemic. And so especially like trucking schools and things like that, like these people who are teaching, freight broker basics and things like that. And you could tell that they probably have never worked in the industry. So I imagine them seeing you doing that live. It's just that added layer of trust in a world that seems very untrustworthy.
Yeah. I mean, and I try and do my best to tell people like, hey, you guys, I'm not as big as you think I am in business, right? Like we are bootstrapping everything, right? Like it is straight dollar
Smart.
in, dollar out. And I'm not going to sit here and try and make it sound like we're something that we're not because nothing's fucking guaranteed, right? Like I have to hunt every fucking day for revenue, every single day for revenue. And there are days where we don't make a fucking dollar. All right. That's the reality of it. And, you're right. Like that influencer culture that is out there. And it's not just a thing in transportation. It's every fucking industry. But there are so many fake motherfuckers that are out there and they're stealing from these people by trying to create a course and everything else. And that's why I tell people all the time, like my stuff will never be behind a paywall ever. It will never be behind a paywall. I'm very fortunate to have advertisers. And if it all went away, I'm still going to show up, like I'm still going to show up and create content because I fucking love it. I love talking shit every day. It's so much fun. But I want to scream from the mountaintops and I want to bring on very successful people onto my show who've built 80, 100, $200 million companies from a bedroom and bring them on my show. Cause I truly feel like if we put out that high quality of content at scale, everybody will get drowned. All the bad shit will get drowned.
Yeah, I feel like I've said well said 7 times already in this conversation, but I'm probably going to say it a lot more. So hopefully you can turn it into a game or something for the listeners at home. Now I am curious. So you were born and raised in Wisconsin,
Yeah.
right? And then you moved to Reno,
Yep.
and then Reno to Phoenix.
Yes.
Why Phoenix?
My wife's hometown is like 3 hours from here.
Oh.
So she's from northern Mexico originally. And shout out Puerto Penasco. It's a little ocean, or it's like a shipping town or shrimping town just 3 hours south of Phoenix. And I wanted to get out of Reno. Reno's fun, but it's just like it was kind of my uh get out of Wisconsin experience. And then we were looking at, it was either going to be Texas or Phoenix. And because my whole thing was I just want to be within 30 minutes of an airport. And then we just found it where she's like, "Hey, I just want to be closer to my mom and dad." And I'm like, "Well, fuck it. I don't want to wear pants. I wear shorts in Arizona." like, I'm like, I don't want to wear pants ever again. I don't want to deal with the cold weather. So Arizona is about as fucking perfect as you can get for that. And I love it down here. I don't ever see myself moving away from here, not full time. Anyways, I will always have a permanent residence in Arizona. And yeah, it's been great ever since.
Well, Phoenix, and the reason why I asked is that Phoenix has kind of emerged as like a Chicago 2.0 in the
No.
freight world, where it's a very like logistics hub. Well, I was curious as if that was the reason why you chose Phoenix,
Oh
and
no.
maybe some insight into why Phoenix is considered that this strong logistics hub that it is now.
Well, I mean, we can go political here. It's because California is a fucking nightmare for taxes, and Arizona's not. Like that's what a lot to do with it. And same with Nevada. So
Mm.
Nevada is also really benefiting from all the corporations leaving California. And
Oh,
it's not
interesting.
just the taxes, it's also what it costs to rent a building. So like a lot of these shippers are, I know brokers can have a hard time, but they are smart. And brokers don't think the shippers are smart. Brokers think they're the smartest ones. But they look at everything, and it's cheaper to import and truck it into Arizona and truck it into Nevada than it is to truck it into the Inland Empire in SoCal and then store it in a warehouse there. Like it's just the cost of good is everything. It's a lot more cost effective to do it that way.
Wow. So okay, so I was wondering, I thought maybe okay, well maybe cross-border trade has had an impact there, but that makes a lot of sense as to why businesses are not just people, because Florida is experiencing the same thing with a lot of people moving to the state. We can't, really handle it right now, or it's taking some time to really adjust to the influx of people moving to the state. So that would make a ton of sense, though, if it was happening to the surrounding states, because California is so bad at just, for small business owners. And now, I mean, it sounds like it's not just small business, it's large enterprises as well who are
It,
getting out.
yeah, it's everything. And like Arizona is literally built to bring on the population because there's nothing out here, right? Like 20 miles outside of Phoenix, it is barren desert. There is nothing out there. My bold prediction is Phoenix and Tucson at some point are going to merge. They're like currently like 100 miles apart, but there is nothing but like small little manufacturing hubs that are bubbling up in between there. I wouldn't be surprised where it's because it's just like in California, right? In SoCal between Los Angeles and the Inland Empire, it's like 90 miles. So from there, I wouldn't be surprised if eventually Phoenix and Tucson merge at
Oh,
that point because
interesting.
there's so much of vacant land in between them.
Yeah, and people love vacant land to be able to do whatever they want with and build it up how they see fit. So let's talk a little bit more, about the freight world, because it obviously it's a challenging time. There are many people that will say, "Oh, we've been in a freight recession for a while now." Where are you seeing the opportunities and for growth, or are they kind of difficult to find?
I think it's always difficult to
Mhm.
find business. I think that I'll say it's difficult to find sustainable business because I think that the reality about freight brokerage is that not a lot of people talk about is there's so many shitty providers that are out there that have burnt so many people that's the biggest obstacle when you're going out there and trying to develop business. It's not your service, it's not your pitch, it's the fact that people fucking despise freight brokers is what it
Mm.
is because freight brokers are notorious for everything that they're known for. Like stereotypes are there for a reason at the end of the day. And brokers are their own worst enemies. They truly are. And I think that the market that we've been in has been so inflated and it's been so easy for brokers out there that they don't think that things are ever going to change. They're getting this is some of the boldest fucking things that I've seen out there
Like what?
about like the way that they treat drivers and all the fines that they try and bake into rate confirmations and everything else. I'm like, where are you getting this from? You know? And I'm just like, how dare you treat somebody like that?
Mm.
But I'm also, knowing that the free market is what it is and me being a fan of it's only a matter of time before I'm in your customers' ears. And it's only a matter of time before you fuck that opportunity up and I'm going to capitalize on it.
That's what I was gonna say. It's probably a great opportunity for the honest brokers out there to see situations like this, be able to speak on it in a
Yeah.
public setting or in a social media setting. And then that's how I mean, as long as it's not just walking the walk, but
No.
or not talking the talk, but also walking the walk as well. So you have to be able to prove that you're valuable as well.
I think a lot of people out there are also because like selling sucks, right? Like I love selling, but it's fucking sucks. Okay. Because I really, really care about the service that I provide. I really care about other people's businesses, maybe to a fault, right? Maybe that fucks me up. But I think that the rejection, it beats down anybody, no matter what, because the reality is you lose 99% of the time. You lose. You will get told no, you will get hung up on, you will hear every form of rejection known to the sales, you know, of any industry, right? And if you watch any of the like very successful sales reps out there, they will all tell you that. So it's emotionally taxing, right? Like I have confidence issue. I get like self-conscious about shit because eventually I'm like, fuck, am I this bad? You know? And I think that it's one of those things that you just really got to fight through it. And not a lot of people are willing to do it, right? Not a lot of people are willing to put in the work required. I saw a quote about everybody wants the top spot, but nobody wants to go through what that individual went through to get there. And I feel like the exact same thing is applicable in every form of business. A lot of people want to be successful. They just don't want to go through what's required to be successful. It's easier to sit back and blame the world for your problems. It's easier to sit back and say it's somebody else's fault that I'm an alcoholic, or it's because my dad was an asshole growing up. That's why I drink, and I'm overweight because of this, and my world sucks because of that. It's a lot easier to do that. And I'm using my own examples of how I thought for a very long time. It was so much easier to blame the world for my problems as opposed to looking at myself and being in the mirror and saying, I'm the fucking problem. I'm the constant in all of my problems. And not a lot of people want to have that.
So what are those little moments that when you're going through, when you're having bad days or maybe even bad stretches where it goes on for weeks, maybe months, what are the little moments that you found that have said, okay, I'm still on the right track. Like I'm not as much of an asshole as I thought I was, or I'm not, doing a bad
Yeah.
job. What are those little moments that have worked for you to make you keep going?
A lot of it comes in the messages that I'll get from people who are like, "Hey, we love what you say. Please keep doing that." A lot of it is holding myself accountable throughout the day, right? Because again, you're vocal in the industry. I'm vocal in the industry. I'm at a lot of stuff, but I'm also like 99% of the time, I do the same shit every single day, right? Like if I strapped a GoPro to me, you guys would be like, you are the most boring motherfucker on earth because I do the same shit. And I've developed that process, Blythe, that I know if I eat the right foods every day, if I get my workouts in, if I do my reading, if I, drink my water, if I do that, I know that even in the shittiest of days, I won. I still won that day. And that's what keeps me going is it's deducing it down to a single day and looking at it like that. Because it's and I go back to like when I first started my business, like I bought this little Walmart dry erase board. It was just a little one that I wrote out my schedule of my day. And every hour from 7 a.m. till 3 p.m., I put those 8 hours down. And for the first like 3 months, it was post morning video at 7 a.m., create video for following day at 2 p.m. And there was nothing else on that board,
Hmm.
nothing at all. And I was sitting there mindlessly, just like with every early entrepreneur, trying to figure out what the fuck am I supposed to do, And
Everything. You're
yeah,
supposed to do everything.
yeah. But I've also found that as long as I hold myself to higher standards, as long as I do that, even when I'm not winning that business deal or closing that new client or, I know that I won as a person that day.
So you start the podcast
Mhm.
after leaving brokerage. You kind of have, your dream has kind of evolved a little.
Yep.
So what was the catalyst to take it to the next moment and say, I want to be a freight agent and I want to do it for SPI?
Yeah, it was like me being me. I'm like, I got to get more bold. I can't theorize anymore. And I didn't want anybody like, and again, and I was probably making this up in my head, right? Like, I didn't want anybody to be like, well, you're not actually moving freight. So, and again, I make up a lot of shit in my head, just like a lot of people do. But I'm like, I'm also trying to be like, from a content perspective, I'm like, all right, how can I really blaze my own fucking path and know that no other motherfucker is going to take that route? So I'm like, fuck it. I'm just going to broker. I'm going to do it all over again. I'm going to start from zero revenue, zero customers, zero everything. And I'm going to build it up, and I'm going to look back in 5 years. And when I'm doing $1 billion+ in revenue, and I'm going to look back and be like, I fucking showed you. I've been telling you guys this for 8 years. This is what you got to do. And I went with SPI because they believed in me before most people believed in me. And I love Mike and James, and I love fucking Anita and Joe. I love everybody over Mark,
RJ.
everybody, RJ, everybody. And that to me is, and anybody could take what I'm about to say and be like, oh, it's easy for you to say that because they're paying you or this and that. They are the best group of people I have ever worked with in the entirety of my life, from a marketing partnership, but from a freight brokerage standpoint, they are truly committed to success. And I cannot say enough positive about them. And that was my first thing. They could have easily said, no, man, like, dude, we love you, but like, that's a big risk for us. And without hesitation, they're like, yeah, absolutely. The freight coach starts an agency with us. How much better of an opportunity would that be? And I'm like, holy shit, you guys are really on board with that. And that's why I went with it. And they are more than advertised. They are better than I thought that they were going to be.
Yeah, I cannot co-sign that enough, because I don't know if I've told the story publicly yet, but when my when my show Cyberly on Freightwaves ended, it ended on day one. So it was November 1st. Well, I guess the contract technically ended October 31st.
Yeah.
November 1st was the start of a Freightways conference that I was already planning on going to. I was already there in Chattanooga for this conference. And Mike from SPI sought me out. He had
Yeah.
already been trying to talk to me at the TMSA conference. And I was in such a, and I remember connecting with you there. And
Yeah.
we talked for quite a long time about, what pathways to take. It was mostly me just venting of like, what path do I go? Like, what do I do? And so when my contract ended November 1st, Mike sought me out. He talked to you first to make sure that it was okay with you, because he didn't want to like step on anybody's
I
toes.
know.
And I was like, whoa,
Wow.
but the fact that he did that told me everything that I needed to know.
Yeah.
And then because he didn't want to burn any bridges with you if he were to also work with me. And he sat down and he told me, he's like, look, we believe in you. We believe in your content. Let's do this. They were the first advertiser on the show, and they remain, the advertiser still on this show. So I completely echo, everything you've said between James and Anita and Joe, RJ, everybody that's been super helpful to us. Like, it's not just I don't consider it as just a sponsorship. Like, I consider it a friendship, a business relationship as well. Like, it's definitely a lot of really great, and friendship too. It's one of those things that it's been the biggest blessing, I think, in my business life is working with them, because it's opened up. It's allowed me to be able to hire somebody to help me with the show production, so I can focus on other high revenue things. And it's allowed me that extra flexibility to be able to systematize my business, create those processes. And it sounds like that's exactly what, how it's helped you too.
Oh yeah. Straight up. I can't speak enough of them. I truly can't. They are like, I just think like anybody out there, because like the agency thing was kind of I didn't know enough about it. And I like what I did hear about it, I didn't like. But after I met them and talked with them, like it is truly a license to print money. Like if you have customers and you are a W-2, and again, I'm not saying everybody needs to go out and start their own business because it's not for fucking everybody, right? If you need that comfort, stay a W-2. Like straight up, don't do it. But like if you have the itch to go out and start your own, I look at the agency model. Look at SPI. They have everything you need as a broker to succeed. Like hands down. You truly, as a startup agent, whatever, you truly are able to flex like you're a couple $100 million organization because you are with them. You are a couple $100 million organization. They have everything at your disposal.
And I with that, I have told other people, especially on I do a monthly show with Grace as well, Grace Sharkey from Freightways. We host a show or an episode series together called Freight Friends.
Yeah.
And on that, I've told her before, like I think the freight agent model is the future of freight brokerage. I think it's the hidden gem as far as entrepreneurship in just all of logistics. I think do you think that I'm accurate in that statement? It's
I
the future of freight brokerage?
I straight up do. I think there's going to be a definite rise in it. And I think that a lot of companies are going, I mean, because a lot of companies are already exploring it. And I think that what better opportunity, because I think most people that they want the flexibility of doing it on their own. They just don't want the financial risk of doing it on their own. I think that really is really what it boils down to. And like SPI takes on all the financial risk. They do everything. And yeah, there's a revenue share as it should be because they give you everything that you need, right? And from like a startup perspective, because here's another thing that nobody talks about. You know how fucking expensive insurance is? You know how expensive technology is? You're literally just for like a bare bones startup tech stack with insurance, you're going to run probably $5,000 a month as a solo person. If you want all the bells and whistles, it pales in comparison to what it is to have. And then on top of that, you might not be invoicing people properly. You might not get paid. Like your customers might default on their bills. Cause ironically, you guys, not all business is good business. I hate to break it to you, ladies and gentlemen, motherfuckers will use you and not pay you. All right. Harsh reality of life. They take on all that risk. They vet everybody for you. Like you can literally unplug on a Friday and plug in that with them on a Monday, and you have access to fucking everything that you need.
And that's consistently what I hear from all of SPI's freight agents, and because we do a regular series every
Yeah.
month where we feature a freight agent, and that's just sort of the resounding sentiment that I hear from them. I felt supported from day one. There's never been a reason to even look anywhere else at other agency programs because as soon as they sign on the dotted line, then they have everything that they've ever needed. Plus, they're continuously investing in the newer technology to fight against fraud and payment issues and all of those different things that this evolving industry is dealing with on a daily basis. And so I think it's very much like entrepreneurship, like business in a box type of experience, but they do try to focus on like you're in a unique situation where you didn't have a book of business, but you had been a freight broker before and you had
Yeah.
already created content. So I think that that's why that they made the exception for you. But I'm
Mhm.
also curious as to what kind of advice you would give to somebody who is already a freight broker right now and is thinking about becoming a freight agent. How do you go about like maybe moving your book of business? Are non-competes still a thing? Like how do you protect yourself, but also maybe not screw over the company you're currently with, but set yourself up for the future?
Yeah, I truly believe in doing everything the right way. Like if you're under a non-compete out there, again, this isn't legal advice at all. I would try and negotiate your way out of it. I really would. I would try my absolute best to put some exclusions on there. I would everything's fucking negotiable at the end of the day. Um, and if they don't allow you to do it, I look at it like this. You signed the document. Again, you're an adult. You need to accept responsibility for your actions, no matter what. You got to deal with it, right? I also think that there are ways that if you want, like, say you get released, right? Because I don't want to make this sound like I'm telling people to fucking backdoor anybody or anything like that. If you are free to go out there and really do it, I think that one thing that most people need to understand is that it is probably 100 times harder than you truly can even think right now. Um, you're going to have customers who might come with you, but they're not going to stay with you, and you have to constantly fight for the next customer, the next, you can't miss on your sales outreach. Yeah, you can, like everybody has bad days and stuff like that, but like it is a lot harder than you think. It really is. And you are in a position when you're out on your own where you don't have a boss anymore. And that's not always a good thing. It's not always a good thing to have all the freedom in the world because not a lot of people can function outside of structure. Structure is a good thing. And then when you have those parameters to operate in, because not everybody's an entrepreneur, not everybody truly wants it. They think they do. But I think like if you are like, hey, I have to do it. I can't look back when I'm 40 or 50 years old and say I should have at least tried. What's the harm in giving it 2 years? Get a part-time job, you know? And if your spouse, if you're married, uh, and if they're supportive of it, go for it. Like, you don't need any of the shit. Like, it's nice, right? Like, it's nice having cool stuff, but like, if push came to shove, I'd get rid of this office. If push came to shove, I'd get rid of shit. Like, but that's like what you need to be willing to do to kind of like make it long term if you're committed to it, right? Because you're gonna get punched in the face repeatedly, sometimes multiple times a day, sometimes multiple times a day for multiple weeks on ends, which turns into multiple months on end. That's a reality, right? Like it's fucking hard, but it is so worth it for you to look back. For me now to look back and be like, my worst month now is better than my best month when I first started. When you can have that comparison, you're like, fuck, okay, I'm way further ahead than I thought. Like I'm not joking when I tell people like I was lucky to get 100 downloads in a month when I first started. Maybe my first 6 months, my record was like 350. I do that in a day sometimes. Like I do that in an hour sometimes, right? So it's like when you're having a challenging time with this shit, if you pull back the lens and look over the last couple of years, you're like, fuck yeah, I am way further ahead. And I built this shit, right? Like, yes, I had help, right? Like I had mentors, I had people around it, but like I fucking did this. That to me, like that's what it's worth it.
So, if you are, you mentioned earlier about freight sales tips and how you've been helping other folks with their journey. What are some of the, I guess, the practical, tactical level tips that you could give somebody who may be struggling in their freight sales role, whether they're working in house at a brokerage or they're already an agent? What are some of those tactics that you think could work for a good majority of people in those positions?
Um, Research your prospects for the love of God. Research your prospects. Like, don't just call somebody for the sake of calling them and asking, "Can I be added to your RFP? Can I be added to your quote list?" Don't do that, right? Like, I talk about a niche often, and I truly feel like this is for those sales reps who are like they've never done anything at a high level. They're just getting started out. Choose one freight type, right? You want the biggest net to cast? Drive-in freight accounts for 70% of the freight market. All right. Literally 70% of the freight market is drive-in freight. Even take it down and even further notch, right? Like call shippers in your area and ask to stop by and introduce yourself. Like I just do anything that what you're currently doing, but keep it simple, right? Like the KISS thing, keep it simple, stupid. That's the thing, right?
Yes.
It's truly applicable. Keep it simple. Call one thing repeatedly because what you're missing is reps. All right. I hate rejection as much as the next one. I hate getting hung up on as much as the next one. And I've been doing this for a long time and it still bothers me because I am competitive. Um, do the same thing day in and day out and then make changes. What's working, right? Like if you're calling somebody and you notice the tone is different, use that for a while. be okay with changing up your approach. There is no set way that it's like, hey, say this on every call, then every shipper is going to love you and get you stuff. That's not the case. You're going to make thousands and thousands of calls before you find a handful of shippers that you can grow with. So I think keep it simple, do the same thing day in and day out, and volume is your friend. Fuck up often, and then you learn what not to do. I'm like, at this point in my life, again, I'm not old, but I'm also not young either. There's a lot of value in the mistakes that you experience because they teach you lessons that success never will teach you. Because success is I love succeeding, but success gives you a false sense of what it takes. And then you start drinking your own Kool-Aid, where failure is one of those things where it's like, I hate losing as much as the next person, but I also love knowing what not to do.
Yeah, I think it's the athletes who you always hear about, like the one coach in high school or, in college that didn't believe in you, or the one reporter that said something bad about you, and they use it for motivation for all season long, for years even. And I think that is finding I don't know, like maybe the revenge factor of somebody not believing in you, somebody turning you down, and you saying, I'm going to prove you wrong, and I'm going to prove
Oh,
you wrong over and over again.
I got a bag of Doritos on my shoulder of chips. Like, I got a laundry list of motherfuckers who I am like, long term, yeah, I'm proving myself right, like ultimately, but I got a lot of motherfuckers who I am here to show that you fucked with the wrong person. All of those people who are like, talking about like, oh, that little podcast or this and that. Oh, you're doing that still. I'm just like, I just show people like, if you're going to compete with me, you better be willing to show up every day. Cause I don't miss. I don't really miss often. Like, I might miss a couple of days here and there because, I have other shit going on and, you did, but like I've put out like, if you want to compete with me, I got a long fucking runway of episodes you got to put out before you get caught up,
I love that quote, that little podcast.
Yeah. That little podcast or, I'm just a little announcer on social media. I fucking know. And if you're listening to this, I hope like, yeah.
I love it.
Those,
I love it so much.
Those comments, now I laugh at them. I'm like, you have no idea.
I'll show you.
Blythe, I'll text you because one day something will happen when I hit it. I'm not speaking about this publicly yet, but I'll text you, watch this, and then you'll know.
I can't wait. We have talked, we've talked about accountability. We've talked about what sort of the freight world looks like, freight landscape looks like, especially from a sales perspective. I'm also curious to know, because I'm wondering if you're maybe in the same boat as me. But it wasn't last year, but the year before, I think that I went to it was actually last year. I went to too many conferences for me. I think I went to 8 total in 1 year. And as a very small business, small but growing, I will say, it was very tough to deal with the workload that comes along with going to conferences and the sort of the time structure that you've been talking about in this episode so far. So I'm curious as to how you balance sort of the in-person networking and conferences and education and things like that versus like the real day-to-day job.
Yeah, I'm a student of the game at the end of the day. And when I'm not at work, I'm doing something to move my business forward, whether it's listening to podcasts, audiobooks, reading. I choose my time wisely in what I will do. And I have come to the realization, like, there are a couple of core conferences that I won't miss, no matter what, because I love what they do. But the overwhelming majority of the conferences that I went to, I feel like it's the same crowd of people who are there at all of them, and they're all talking about the exact same shit that is not applicable to my business. With all due respect, nobody is going to teach me anything new about selling freight at this point. They're not going to tell me something that I'm like, holy shit, why didn't I think to cold call? That's not going to happen. And that's where my business is. I need to fucking build revenue. I think that there are a lot of great intentions behind some of these conferences that are out there, and there's a lot of great information that's out there. It's just not what I need in my business right now. And that's just kind of where I'm at, where it's like, I'm going to scale back. And then again, like I, if I'm going to shut down anything for a couple of days, I'm at a point, or again, I need revenue. So it's like, if you want me to come to your show, it's going to cost you money. It's like, I'm at a position in my business where you are asking me to take away from my business and fly out there, pay to fly out there, pay for a hotel, pay for all my meals, do all of that for free. Like, again, I'm not trying to make myself sound more important than I'm not, but I'm not at that point in my business. In a couple of years, yeah, you know what? Fuck, I'll come out and speak at your conference. I'll pay for my own flight. Don't worry about it. I'm not there revenue-wise right now where I can shut it down.
Yeah, I think it's easy for the folks who work at a company where they're the ones footing the bill and they're
Mhm.
the ones, you can't wait to get out of the office. But for me, I love what I do. And it's costing me money, not just going to the event, but the pre-planning ahead of time, the follow-up afterwards. It's, some of the networking I would say that it is worth it to not only build relationships, but solidify some of those relationships as well. But for a lot of them, it's now becoming a more of, I guess, a choice and a leisure choice if I'm
Yeah.
going to go. If there's some companies that have multiple conferences a year, I'm sorry, I'm not going to multiple conferences a year. You get one out of me and you're lucky to get that. And that's just, and I think of it as, lucky from the sense of I have to pull myself away from this, and
It yeah, I
it
think
needs to still keep moving without me.
I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, Blythe, but when you are the expense account, like I'm the expense account, I have to pick and choose wisely on that. And again, like I'm trying to grow a fucking business, right? Like
Right.
I'm not trying to play business here, right? Like I'm not trying to play fucking freight influencer or anything. Like I'm building like I got a fucking family to feed. I got bills to pay. I can't shut shit down for a week to go fucking bump elbows with people. You know, I have to be strategic about my time, how I allocate it, and what I do. Because again, this is a system, this is a machine, and I need to be a part of this right now at this current juncture of my business. Again, 2-3 years from now, probably will look a lot different because I will have 15, 20, 30 employees at that time. I will have a leadership team in place where, hey, Chris can shut down and go to this event for a couple of days. And my priorities will be different. My priorities right now, add shippers, add revenue, hire. That's my priorities in business.
Amen to that. I mean, except for the shipper part, I don't have
Yeah.
to worry about that. But add new companies to work
Yeah.
with,
Yeah. Hell
add
yeah.
revenue, and then we can talk and we can sort of, socialize at the conferences at a later date. I have no problem going to them, but I have to be able to financially justify it. And
Yep.
that sell to me is way different than somebody who is, just a VP at a company that their company is paying for it and you can't wait to get out of the office. I love what I do, and you need
Yeah.
to almost like drag me away from it. And I'm still thinking about it nonstop, like while I'm at the conference as well. So it's one of those things where I think it just, some people are entrepreneurial and then some people aren't, and you have to be able. I think it's the power. You actually said it in the Freight Caviar podcast, because I listened to that. I know it was a little bit older of an episode,
Yeah.
I think a couple years, but you mentioned the power of saying no. And that really resonated with me because it's challenging to say no to
Oh,
some of these people and to tell them, I'm sorry, I can't do this. I have to prioritize this other thing. Because it can feel, a little bit like an ego boost that, oh, you want me to come and speak? Like, yeah, let me try and make it work. But you have to keep things in priority. And whatever you are saying yes to, you're saying no to something else. And so it's almost like thinking of it in the inverse as well.
that perfectly summarizes it to me, Blythe, because it is like, because here's the reality. When you're building anything, whether it's a media, whether it's a brokerage, it doesn't matter what it is, you are deafeningly slow when you first start. Nobody wants to talk to you. Nobody gives a fuck about what you're doing. Nobody fucking cares, right? Some people will, right? But like the overwhelming majority of people do not fucking care about what you're trying to do, what you're trying to build, because it's earned, right? Like time is money, like truly. And you want to say yes to everything. And I think every business naturally, because how do you know what's going to be beneficial and what's going to not be beneficial unless you go. And I think after you go to a bunch of events or you do a bunch of things, you start to, again, back to the systems thing. It's all about volume. And then you realize like, hey, this doesn't move the needle. This worked. This does not. And then you got to every quarter or every 30 days, you got to look back and say like, all right, what worked, what didn't? All right, cut the shit that didn't work, double down on what worked. And then the next 30 days, all right, what worked, what didn't? So I think that that's a lot of it. And again, it's like when you're first starting out, you just want anybody to say yes. You want anybody to give you attention. And then you get a little attention and then you're like, then you start feeling bad. But again, don't feel bad. No is a complete sentence. Like, and you have to look out, does this actually move the needle for your business? And if it is not a resounding 1000% yes, say no. I appreciate the opportunity. Maybe next time.
Well said. I'll add that one as the last thing, as sort as another well said again for this episode.
The no is a complete sentence. Andy Frisella says that all the time on his podcast because he does a bunch of shows. Again, follow him. I try and make sure that I give him a lot of credit because like the dude gives away pure gold all the time for free on his podcast. And he said that, and that's where it hit me. I'm like, no's a complete sentence. And then frankly, I don't owe anybody anything, right? Like I'm not in debt to anybody where I need to pay somebody a favor or anything like that. And neither does anybody else. If you don't want to do something, don't.
Well said again.
I hope somebody made a shot game out of this.
Oh God, they'd be hammered by the time that they finish this episode. Especially if you listen to this show on, like with a 1.25 or 1.5 speed, or if you're a psychopath and listen to anything 2 or more, which is just insane. All right. Last couple questions here, because I know time is money. I know you got to get back to moving freight. But sort of last piece of advice for someone who is seeking out, sort of the new American dream. If you're a founder looking to market yourself, or maybe you are, a broker looking to become a freight agent, what does the new American dream look like, and what advice would you give to them?
Be very selective on who you take advice from. I think that with it being a digital world, you can vet people who you follow, right? Like, again, back to Andy Frisella, he says this on a show. Do they have an actual website? Do they have a business? Do they have a building? Do they sell a product? What have they built? In today's day and age, you can see there's digital track records of people, right? So I think be careful on who you take advice from. Definitely don't take advice from people who have less money than you, don't have a business, don't have a podcast, don't have what you're trying to do. Don't take advice from them. And then I think at the end of the day, you got to start. Everybody sucks. I still suck to this day. I'm still figuring things out every single day. And I also realize that at the end of the day, what truly matters to me. And to me, I look at it as who's going to be there, and not to try and sound morbid, but like who's going to be there when I'm on my deathbed? Really, fundamentally, who's going to be there? Unless my wife kicks me to the curb. I'm just kidding. But like my wife, my son, and my future children, that'll probably be it. Maybe a couple more. That's who I'm worried about. I love people. I want to do the best that I possibly can, but I don't give weight to 99.9% of the opinions that people have of me. Like, they don't say it to my face. If they saw me in real, they're not going to say a fucking word to me in person. And if they did, I'm probably going to laugh at them and be like, really? I think that's what it is. You got to find what it is. What do you want to do every day to deal with the rejection, the constant battles that you're going to have? Is it worth it? Is it not? When you're down to your last couple of dollars and you don't have anybody to reach out to, you can't get financing, you can't do anything. You got to think in those moments, who am I really doing this for? And I think like that's the new age of things, because I think that the more that technology comes about, the less people are going to adopt it. I truly think that. I think that more people are going to they're going to crave real conversations. They're not going to, because like it's going to get to a point where it's like, is this an AI bot or is this a real person?
I had a question for you that I was going to ask you if you were nervous about AI influencers, but I feel like I already know the answer to that.
No, I'm not worried about any of that shit. I'm not, because like I'm not competing against that. I'm truly not.
Well, let's add another well said to the end of this conversation because I know you got to get back to work. And so,
And this
uh,
episode is sponsored by Tito's. No, I'm just kidding.
well, I think if Mike had it his way, it would be a very particular kind of tequila
Yes.
that he would pick
Yeah.
to sponsor this show. So, well, thank you, Chris. Where can folks, if they're not, I'm assuming that they're not already following you, but if they're not, where can they follow you? The podcast, all of your
Yep.
work, all that good stuff.
Just literally look for the Freight Coach on anything. And that was another piece of advice I would say, own your brand right away and own it on every social media channel out there. But yeah, the Freight Coach, you can look for me, iTunes, Spotify, LinkedIn, Instagram, anything like that. You can find it.
Awesome. Well, this was an incredible conversation, perfect for, a July 4th release. So hopefully it gives folks, some motivation, some inspiration to think about it. Maybe you're on a summer break and you're looking for making a shift in your career. So take advice, take accountability and start building. So thank you, Chris, for all the useful advice.
Anytime, Blythe. We'll talk to you soon.